Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello and welcome to this episode of our show. This is your host, Keith Doherty. Today our special guest is top real estate agent Wes Womack of Womack Real Estate team under JB Goodwin REALTORS based out of Austin, Texas. Wes and his wife, Prima, started Womack Real Estate under JB Goodwin REALTORS 4 years ago. Their business rapidly grew, and they've been fortunate to have won awards for top sales and listing agent, platinum top 50 finalist for the city of Austin, nominated for top residential realtor by the Austin Business Journal, and more. Wes holds certifications for GRI, which is Graduate Realtor Institute, and ALHS, which is Accredited Luxury Home Specialist. All right, with all that said, Wes, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Keith. It's an honor to talk with you guys today.
Wes, if we could start for our listeners, what led you into real estate? Was it something that you always knew you wanted to do, or did you maybe stumble into it?
You know, it definitely wasn't anything that I knew I always wanted to do before real estate. I was in the hospitality industry and started working in restaurants since I was 14 years old. And through time, my brothers and I were able to open and operate and own quite a few different bars and restaurants here locally in Austin. That business started growing a lot faster than we had planned, and it's grown from day-to-day operations and led us to focus more on acquiring properties for new concepts. And so I guess you could say that the seed for real estate was kind of planted at that time, and that was kind of the end goal for that business. However, the bar business really started to wear me down just in all different facets of my life, physically, mentally, spiritually, the whole nine, and was also wearing on my relationship with my brothers at the time. And so I ended up abruptly leaving that business without really having a plan, and I was kind of at a crossroads in life, just trying to figure out what we wanted to do. And so my wife and I had a long, hard, heart-to-heart talk about what we wanted to do, and we knew that we wanted to get involved in something that would allow us to actually help people and not just consume and kind of take from life. And we also wanted to be able to give back a little bit. But, you know, truth be known, I also wanted to be able to scratch the entrepreneurial itch and, you know, just also be able to keep my finger on the pulse of the city as I kind of was doing already. And so it kind of led us to real estate.
Excellent. And what personal attributes, traits, or qualities do you think have most contributed to the success that you've had so far?
I think hands down the most important trait is just being authentic. You know, I think that if you're truly concerned about wanting to help other people and not about chasing money, then I think that you'll earn the trust that's required when helping someone make one of the biggest financial decisions of their life. You know, as far as just kind of on the technical side of things too, I also like to, I have what I like to call a healthy dose of OCD. So I think being critically organized along with just constant communication is a must for this business.
Yeah, I think you hit on something that's important to point out for our listeners, where you talked about, not focusing generally, on money, but providing value for people, actually providing a service and helping others. And I think that tends to be a common theme with a lot of the successful agents that we've interviewed on this show. So I just want to point that out again to everybody, that it's kind of the underlying factor that a lot of successful agents like yourself seem to always bring to the forefront, that no one talks about, like you even said, focusing on the commission or the money. That tends to be a byproduct of providing that value and that service for somebody.
Absolutely, and I think that if your heart's in the right place and you're truly here to serve some people, then money will follow inevitably. I think that's with any business, though.
Absolutely, yeah. Do you think you could give our listeners an example of when your traits have played a role in your path towards success?
Yeah, I remember last year, this is kind of going back towards the OCD thing, but, last year stands out during peak season. We had 17 files open at the same time with new business coming in on top of it, and you have to be seriously on top of your game to pull that off without allowing a single client to feel anything less than your only client. So you have to just really be very, very organized and just get at time blocking and just making clients feel just as important as the next person, which they are. I've also got quite a bit of a reputation of not selling homes to clients, which I'm sure a lot of agents are going to disagree with this, but I usually talk most people out of just about every home we look at. And I'm a firm believer that, I'm a firm believer in showing as many properties as it takes to find the right one. And at that point, I just kind of help you buy it as opposed to actually sell it to you. So I think that there's a huge trust factor there when that comes up.
And obviously with any business, and you obviously, probably even saw it with your previous life and the bar business and all that, but not everything is always just smooth sailing. There tends to always be adversities and things that come up. So can you talk a little bit about some of the adversities or trials that you've had to overcome in your real estate business in order to achieve your goals?
Absolutely. This is more of a personal issue for me, but the major adversity I had to overcome was my ego. I came into real estate with a big ego. I had a little bit of a success with my previous business and thought that I knew quite a bit of people around town. And I learned that just because you've had that in the past doesn't mean squat in this business. This is by far the toughest business I've ever done, and it's a very humbling one at that. There's no instant success at all, and the only way to build your business is by starting at the very bottom. Having enough humility to do anything and everything it takes to start building that business and the client base, To be honest, I think that a lot of people see a lot of reality shows of agents driving around in Ferraris and selling $1 million homes. They get the wrong idea. And I learned out the hard way that no matter who you know or what you've done in the past, people aren't just beating down your door begging you to sell their house for them.
And I guess what kept you going despite these obstacles? Obviously you had success, like you said, prior as an entrepreneur running businesses, and then you try the real estate, and like you said, it wasn't as easy as you thought it might have been initially. Why didn't you give up? What kept you going?
Keith, it's simple for me, and once again, more on a personal basis, but giving up and failing, this goes with our past business and our business now, is it just simply wasn't an option to fail. Not to get too personal, but I actually dropped out of high school and left home when I was 15 years old, and I have very little education and little to no trades to fall back on. And so it boiled down to either hustle and get it done or just don't eat. And when you have a wife and kids, and to be perfectly honest, I like to eat. You don't have any other choice but to get it handled.
Yeah, well, that definitely is, we've heard different people talk about their motivation, but like you said, that definitely backed you into a corner where you obviously didn't have any other choice but to keep moving forward. And I think it's, obviously for you, there was a no choice, but for others, it's almost, if you think about that, going in with that mindset of, I'm not going to quit, I'm going to keep fighting, I'm going to push forward. And even, like I said, you were forced into it, but if other people can adapt that and come out with that fighting mentality of, hey, I gotta take care of things, I gotta get things done, and have that mindset of success, that, you have a good chance that you're going to be able to push through things.
Absolutely. It's absolutely detrimental in this business, and not to get too long-winded on this, but I think a lot of people have a hard time finding the work ethic that it takes to really be your own boss and get out of bed and go to work. And, luckily, due to some of the hardships that I faced at an earlier time in my life, that the thing that I did get out of all of that is a very strong work ethic, because we just always had to work. And so if you don't have that drive and don't have that mentality, then you're up for an uphill battle for sure.
So I guess kind of looking forward, what is your vision for your business and your career, say, over the next 5 years?
My main goal is to not have a heart attack. But to be perfectly honest with you, I'd really like to get on the developmental side of real estate. I really want to get involved in creating neighborhoods from the ground up, and I've been fortunate enough to have some really, really great mentors in this business and really successful friends in this business as well, that's let me look over their shoulders and just kind of start looking at the infrastructure of how these things are done, and that's kind of what I want to start doing. I feel like I've got a really good grasp on buying and selling homes right now, and I'd like to just see it kind of grow into a much bigger project.
And what do you feel is the best way that you market yourself as a real estate professional so you can have continual growth?
Hands down, in my personal opinion, I think that just simply being involved in the community is the best way to market yourself. I know there's tons of different ways that you can blast your name out, on the internet and cross signs and all that kind of stuff, but there's nothing more valuable than just being involved in the community, and the more one-on-one relationships you have with people so that they can actually see that you're a legitimate and trustworthy resource, and they actually have that connection with you. I think it's just priceless. I mean, you could either click on an ad or talk to your friend about doing business with them. And I think that talking to your friend would trump anything.
And I think you kind of hit on this a little bit with some of the things you said earlier, but I think too, there's a lot of misconceptions and myths about, becoming a real estate agent. For one, you mentioned, you're driving around in a flashy car and it's all just glamour and glitz. And I think that's because the barrier to entry is pretty easy. You take a little bit of training, you pass the test, and you have a license. And I think some people think that, you're just going to go to sleep and wake up, a millionaire the next day because now you're in real estate. And I think that also lends itself to, public perception, how people look at agents because of that. So what do you think the biggest misconception or myth that people have about working with a real estate agent is?
Keith, this one kind of hits close to home, or not necessarily close to home, but kind of strikes a nerve a little bit. But I think that hands down the amount of work that goes into a transaction is something that people just don't realize. And there's a huge misconception that, that we just show up, show a couple of homes, and then kick back and collect a check. And the public just has no idea of the countless hours behind the scenes, and it as you mentioned earlier in this conversation, that very rarely do things go smoothly and does a deal go smoothly, and very rarely does the client even know that it didn't go smoothly, or they shouldn't anyway. And it's our duty to take on that stress for our clients and not let that bleed over into, bleed onto them. And so I kind of wish that there was just I wish that maybe once or twice the client could be a fly on the wall when I'm up at 2 a.m. putting out fires so that they don't lose their dream home, just to wake up as if nothing happened at all. And so, if people really understood what goes into, between us and the lenders and the title company, yada, 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 I think that they'd have a much higher respect for what we do.
Absolutely. And I think, too, a lot of times, a seller just doesn't realize all the, litigation you could potentially save them from with all the disclosures and everything else you protect them from behind the scenes, that whereas people just think, oh, I'll just put a sign up in front of my house and sell my house and it'll be a smooth transaction. But it obviously, like you said, 95% of what happens behind the scenes, they don't see what you're doing in their best interest to protect them from everything.
Absolutely. It's by far one of the biggest business transactions that most people will do. And there's a lot of legalities, and I mean, you hit the nail on the head. There's so much stuff that goes into protecting them and their livelihood that it's. I wish that they knew what all we did,
So Wes, let's say you get a call from a family member or a friend, and they're in another state, and they want to sell their home. So they say, hey, let's call Wes and get some advice. What advice would you give them about selecting an agent that can best serve their needs? Kind of like how you make sure you take care of your people. And I understand in real estate you could, make calls and do a referral, but from a general advice standpoint, what would you tell people to look for when selecting an agent?
I say this to people all the time, Keith, that I think the most important thing to do is just to sit down and talk with a few different people and figure out who you're going to like spending time with for the next few months. And not only just spending time with and who you're going to get along with, but who you're actually going to trust. It's, even when we go up against, in a competitive situation when buyers are interviewing us or whatever, they always, people have a habit of, kind of vomiting at the mouth all these stats and how great they are and this and that. And I'd like to think that, if you're a decent agent, you're under a roof to be interviewed by someone, I'd like to think that your resume has the numbers that shows that you know what you're talking about. And so if you can get past that and know that, they obviously know how to sell a house, well, the next step is just finding somebody that you truly believe is going to look after your best interests and truly protect you and your finances and not their own. And so, I mean, my best advice is talk to as many people as you can and figure out who you actually like to hang out with and trust.
Excellent advice there, and I think I'd like to point out what Wes said there is, you obviously find potentially, agents that have the skill set. Maybe they have some reviews online, they've sold houses, or, they've gone through transactions. But I think what you pointed out is important, that I think sometimes people overlook because they might just think, who's the biggest agent or has the most transactions, and that may not be a good personality fit. Like you said, this could be something that you got to spend time with somebody, you got to be able to trust them, you got to be able to like them, and even though you may come across a top producer, your personality just may not click, and like you said, this is one of the biggest financial decisions and transactions of your life. You may not want to deal with this person on a day-to-day basis, so I think it's important to also take into consideration, like you said, that personality, and make sure it's someone you feel comfortable with, that communication is going to be good, and that you could walk through this with them and knowing they're going to take care of you.
Absolutely.
Now, Wes, if somebody's looking for an agent for real estate services, obviously in the Austin, Texas area, what's the best way they can find out more about you and how you can help them?
Sure. We're easy to find. We're all over the internet. Our website is womackrealestate.com, but you can always find us goofing off on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, with all the social media platforms as well. And you can stumble across us and realize we don't take life too seriously, and probably see the humor in what we do.
Excellent. Well, Wes, we obviously want to take the time to thank you for coming on the show today and sharing your real estate experience with all of our listeners. And if you want to learn more about Wes, especially if you're in the Austin, Texas area, you can go to his site, like you mentioned, womackrealestate.com. Also, below this interview, we're going to have a link to his website and any other contact information so that you can reach out and make contact and see if you guys are a good fit to work together. So with all that said, everybody, until our next show, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Hey, thanks so much, Keith.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.